Hey there, friend. Welcome back to my channel. It is a beautiful Sunday here on the homestead, and I am piddling today. Yep, I'm piddling. Today, more specifically, I'm going to piddle in the greenhouse, and I want to show you exactly what I'm doing with my new little greenhouse down there. That's going to be where I'm winterizing all of my outdoor potted plants and things that I would normally move inside and kind of hope for the best for them over the winter. Things that aren't in the ground but are in pots and I can kind of move around. Instead this year of moving them in the house or in our little guest house over there, then I will use our greenhouse that Alan built me. So I'm also going to try to make use of some of the pots that I put in there and plant some lettuce and leafy greens, maybe some herbs and things as well. So we're going to see how that goes. This is totally going to be an experimental year for the greenhouse. So come along with me today and let's piddle in the greenhouse.
On the farmer's market or online.
Well, let's start by hopping down here into the actual greenhouse. And I am so excited to have this little greenhouse this year. This is the first day that I was able to really start moving things out here and loading the pots in. So I have just been kind of putting odds and ends in here. That big papaya that you see in the left corner there, that one I moved in a few weeks ago because we did have it dipped down at that point, but I've just left it in here. It's a really tropical plant and it actually seems to really love it. Even though the temperatures have been up and down and up and down, it is doing really, really well in here. So it likes the warmth that it gets in the daytime, I'm sure. That papaya itself is doing great. You see over here, there are two other little tiny papaya trees as well. You need more than one for it to pollinate. So I got a couple more from my friends Mike and Becky. And when I repotted those, the leaves all fell off. Well, for the most part. That's why they look a little bit sparse at this point, but I think they're going to be fine. They have new growth on them as well. So next up is that shampoo ginger plant. We bought that recently from some friends too at the farmer's market, and it is doing so well. I may need to give it a little bit of fertilizer because it's looking a little bit pale green, isn't it? But I just set that one into another pot there and left it in its original pot because I didn't want to repot it and take a chance on it. I just moved in this long black planter, and this is what we're going to seed into today, and this galvanized planter as well. So you see I added a little bit of a wire trellis behind it. We're going to experiment with some peas and see if we can get them to climb up there. And then that is just an ornamental pepper plant that I picked up at the nursery recently. So I'm hoping that everything is going to do really, really well in here this winter. It's going to be a lot easier for me to have all this stuff in one spot because over the last few years, we've lived here for 5, almost 6 years now. But over the last few years, we have just had to kind of get creative with where we put all of the pots from the porch. I like to have the deck with lots of pots and things on it that I can plant out in the spring and summer. But some of those things need to be moved indoors because they're not in the ground plants, and also they need a little protection from the extreme winter temperatures. So I say extreme. I am in zone 9A here in South Louisiana. I'm basically in Baton Rouge, just a little bit south. And our average low temperature in zone 9A is about 20 or 30 degrees. So there's nothing extreme about that. We have quite a short winter season here. Our average first frost is usually around November 17th or 20th. And in fact, it's the 29th of November right now. And we just had our first frost last night. So, and then our last frost of the season in the spring is usually about March 7th. So it's a relatively short winter compared to a lot of places here. So what I'm doing now is I'm adding in some of these worm castings. Before I plant out into any of these pots today, I'm trying to add some worm castings, and that is a really, really nutritious thing to add to the soil. I didn't have any compost or anything like that on hand, but this worm castings will do the exact same thing. It adds a ton of trace minerals, it adds a lot of organic matter, and it will feed the soil for all these things that we're going to be seeding today. Also, it's really, really fine, so it is a good medium for the seeds to get started in, because once they sprout, they have a really fine soil to grow into. And as always, I have Clark here, who is wanting to help me out in the greenhouse today. It may be a small space, but there's no space too small for these giant dogs. They just make it work. They might not be able to turn around, they might have to back out, but they're coming in either way. Okay, so you see I just made a few little rows here, and into there I'm going to put some carrot seeds, and then I'm also going to sprinkle in some bunching onions because I don't have any green onions right now. The ones in the garden have not done so well this year, so I just want to start a few little green onions for over winter. And I'm just going to sprinkle in a few of these carrot seeds. That seed pack is one that I picked up at Dollar Tree. You guys, I cannot tell you how many carrot seeds I have started this year. I started 4 different rounds in the actual garden at the end of summer and into the early fall. Every single time, once they sprouted, a chicken would get in the garden, a turkey would get in the garden, something would go in there and dig them up. So finally, this is me putting my hands up in the air and saying, okay, we're going to try something else, because at this point, we're just going to try to grow a few carrots in the greenhouse. Also, what I have done in order to solve my carrot problem is I ordered a 25-pound bag from Azure Standard on my most recent pickup order, because that's probably going to be the only solution to getting good carrots for me this year. I'm hopeful that next year, even though the garden, here's the thing, even though the garden is completely fenced off with a 5-foot welded wire fence, we can go for 1 or 2 weeks at a time without any chicken or turkey going in there. But as soon as they see tiny sprouts in the soil, that is like a moth to flame. They're going in, they're going to dig the soil, they're going to eat the sprouts, and it's like heaven for them. Yeah, it's very difficult to keep them out of there. So I'm using my little garden stool today, and this one is so nice because you can sit on it like a little bench, or you can kneel on it, which is super handy. It saves your back. It really is super nice. And it also folds up, and I can just hang it and store it up on the wall, so it doesn't take up much room at all. It has little like pocket hanger things too if you want to use those, but I typically am just leaving those until I have like a big seed day when I want to put a bunch of stuff into the little pockets. But yeah, that one is a really handy little bench and nice to have on hand. I actually have a 10% off code for those if you want to look at those on Amazon as well. Into this little round pot, I am starting some more cilantro. So I was able to grow cilantro here in the very early spring. I harvested a ton of it. I put it up in the freezer. I just put it in some water. Like I blended it up in the blender in water, and then I made ice cubes out of that. So I still have a little bit of that in the freezer, but of course no fresh cilantro. So this will be nice if this sprouts up. Now I have not seen this sprout up at all yet, unlike the rest of the things that I plant out today, which have already sprouted. So we'll see if this comes to fruition at all. I'm really not sure that it will. That seed there is from Baker Creek Seeds, and I'm just covering it over again with a little bit more of the worm castings because, as I said, it's a really, really fine growing media, and it just allows things to sprout up really nicely. Now what you see there is a cattail. That is Sheldon's tail. This is the first time that he's ever attempted to come into this greenhouse. I'm so shocked. So you'll see him doing his cat thing, you know, being very aloof. I try not to pay him any attention. I act like I don't even see him because I don't want to spook him away. But he's checking things out in here, and this is a first. I'm trying not to move is what I appear to be doing. We'll see what he does. Maybe he'll make an appearance there. So once I get these little pots planted out, then I'll water them in at the end of my planting session here, and then I will give you a little update at the end of the video here on how these things are doing, because spoiler, they are doing great. They have sprouted up, and they are tiny little sprouts at this point, but guess what? They're safe in there. Nothing can get in there and eat them, so that's perfect. Now I'm just going to move a few of these things out of the way because I had a light bulb moment and I decided, why am I not putting the other black planter in here as well. I mean, I might as well. Otherwise, it will just sit on the porch empty for the entire winter. So I want to make use of the space as best I can. It worked out really well that I put the first one up on those cinder blocks, and then I can kind of stair step these. So this is perfect. I just had a light bulb moment. I wasn't even going to put the second one in there to begin with, but then I'm like, why wouldn't I? So back on my little stool here, or my kneeling bench. And then this planter, the second one, has a few things that are growing in it. At the end of the summer, I threw in a mixed seed pack. It was supposed to be wildflower mix, and the only things that really grew are these dianthus plants and maybe rudbeckia or something like that. I'm not sure what the other plant was, but I'm going to attempt to save these little dianthus plants because they really are well rooted. So I'm just going to put them over into another little pot that I had here sitting in the greenhouse with some soil in it. And they seem to be doing just fine with that. I just transplanted them out of this planter and into the little pot. So hopefully they'll do fine this winter as well. And at this point, I need to remove some of this crusty and dry soil off the top. It was such a dry summer here. I mean, drought level dry. Usually my planters would not have just been completely empty and burnt up at the end of summer and into the fall. But it was just an impossible year for things around here. So I just ended up emptying them out and just saying, you know, we'll wait. We will wait to start something else because there's no hope for me standing out there watering continually every day. I just can't do that. I don't have time for all of that watering continually. So into the second one is going to be spinach, lettuce, and I think I put kale in here too. Let's see. A couple types of lettuce. I will do all of these as like baby greens. So even the spinach. So I'm doing a really generous sprinkling of the lettuce seed because I want it to come in pretty heavily. And then the spinach seeds, I'm going to go through and put just a few of those in. That way the spinach will have a little bit more room. But I'm happy if the lettuce comes up and it is pretty heavily seeded in there because I'm just going to take those as baby greens basically. Into each of the little spots there, I'm putting 2 seeds for the spinach. And if I want to, of course, I can thin these out, but we'll see how they do. I'm really not sure how exactly they will do in this potting area. So as I said, for this entire greenhouse, it's very much an experimental year. I have never grown anything in a greenhouse, of course, and I'm not sure how this little greenhouse is going to do. It may freeze just as hard as anywhere else outdoors. We have some ventilation at the top, and I'm hopeful that the sun will warm things up in the day. We do have a thermometer out here, and it definitely warms up in the day, but I'm not sure what that's going to mean for the overnight low temperatures in here. They may be exactly the same as they are outdoors. I really don't know. If that's the case, we may try to use some artificial heating in here as far as like putting a heat lamp when it is extremely cold to keep things from totally freezing, but we'll see how it goes and see what we need to do. This is the planter that I'm working in here. This is the one right beside the shampoo ginger and everything. So I have this, honestly, it was like I can't even remember what that was from, but I've used it as a trellis for things to grow up several times now, and it does really well. So it's not the best on the eyes, but once it's covered in things that are trellising over it, it really won't matter. This is just a galvanized planter that I bought. I think I honestly bought it like from Walmart as a drink holder or something like that. And then I've been using it as a planter for several years since then. So this soil is dry. I haven't done anything to it yet, but I'm going to refresh it with some of the worm castings, and then we'll get some things planted out into it. So I'm going to put in some worm castings for it and refresh the soil, and then let me tell you what I'm going to be putting in it. I set them out here. I'm trying to grab them off the, not time. What's that? Okay.
I am going to do some sugar snap peas. As I said, very experimental. We'll see what happens. We'll try. I also am going to put some kale in here. This is a dwarf variety, so it makes a smaller, more compact plant. And then, as I said, I'm going to grow these as more baby greens, basically. I think we can kind of overseed them in here and then cut them as baby greens, as I said. So, and then the last thing I'm going to do is a succession of radish in here. I have one succession in the garden out there, which are doing good. I need to pull those up and put some more seed in for them, but I'm going to throw a few seeds in here as well and see how they do. So I need to remove a little bit of this dirt first. And I'm just taking that top crusty layer again. This thing needs like CPR, I think. I'm gonna add a good bit to this because this is nice and moist. These worm castings, and this soil needs help. So I'm just gonna mix this through. I'll just use my hands. Much better looking soil there than that old crusty stuff. Okay, let me put a little bit more worm castings on top to plant right into the sugar snap peas. Whatever I have left in this package, I'll go ahead and seed in here. Yeah, it's probably about 25 seeds. That is Sheldon scratching. These are one of our favorite things to just snack on, especially Alan. He loves these to snack on. It's really one of the only raw green vegetables that he will just like eat. So if we can grow some, wouldn't that be wonderful? Okay, I'm just gonna tap these down and then I'll add more worm castings over top. Charbel, I see you snooping. You snooping on me? You're sneaking around like a cat. You're doing a lot of sneaking around like a cat. Okay, I'm gonna cover over with some of the additional soil, but I will get these other things planted out first. Okay, in the middle here, I'm gonna do the kale. Just take over it like this. I don't know, take it over. That's one more row of these, and right here. One more row of kale. Okay, and then some radish on the front. Seeds this year? I got, I ordered from Tree Market. And we're going to be so both of those are ordered seeds for tomorrow. But I think they're going to have it, so maybe not enough. Okay, well, we have finished our greenhouse little project for today, and I think this looks so good. I'm going to back up so I can show you from the doorway just how it looks inside, and you can get a little bit better idea of the scale in there. So I want to leave this side open because I do still have that stuff that I need to move in from the deck up top there, but not quite yet because it's still pretty warm today, and until we get some colder nights and some frost and freezes, then I'm not going to move that stuff inside yet. But so over here we got those dianthus that we pulled out of the planters. That's what that is there. Oh, okay, in this one here we did the cilantro seeds, and in this one I left open, even though this is a lot of room to plant into. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to need that for yet, so I just left that open. That's just the papaya tree there. In these two planters here we did the carrots up in the top one, and then some green onion as well, and then in this bottom one we did lettuces and spinach. So we'll see how those do. In these areas, those two planters there, I left those open as well, with the exception of the little papaya trees that are growing in them too. Of course, that one there, as I said, is the shampoo ginger. This bottom one here, I did lettuce in it. This one over here, I did more radishes in there. This one here, we did the sugar snap peas on the back side. In the middle, we did some curly kale. We'll see how that does for us. And then in the front, we did a few radishes as well. So my little pepper plant is looking good, so he's fine. And there up top, what I have hanging is a little thyme plant. It just looks cute there. I just had thyme in a pot that I hadn't done anything with. So I have a few sweet potatoes over here that are just sitting there kind of aging for a little while. And that was literally all the sweet potatoes that I harvested this year. They did not do well at all. All of my beds really need some nutrition into them, so that's what I'm going to be doing this winter. These are just 2 pots here that have nothing in them but some soil, so I'll just keep that soil damp until I'm ready to do something with it. But there we go. That is it for the day. Over here I have some, hey, over here I have some compost tea that is made from that worm fertilizer. So I'm going to be adding that to a few of the pots here, and then everything else is just going to get watered in really quickly. That way the seeds can start to sprout.